Welcome to the Embodiment Conference. This is truly an epic event that is raising awareness and revealing just how much is happening in the world of embodiment. And this gives me hope about where we're heading as a people. I'm Amara Pagano. I'm the founder of Azul, a conscious movement path of personal transformation. I work with the body and the power of movement to awaken love and consciousness. Embodiment is a key to my work, and the journey of embodying the map of Azul is what facilitates the process of self-realization. I'm excited to sponsor the Dance and Creativity channel to share my love of movement and to celebrate the power that it has to serve our collective evolution. If you are interested in awakening your deepest potential or curious about the spiritual and healing aspects of embodiment, I encourage you to check out Azul. Everyone is welcome. I work with people who love movement and people who have never moved. Follow the link and you'll find 3 gifts for you: a 50-minute Azul journey, a special discount on our online embodiment training, and a free month in our upcoming membership program. So come, check out the Path of Azul. I'll be presenting on the main stage here and in the Dance and Creativity channel, and I hope to see you there. For now, enjoy the richness of the presentation you're about to see.
So I am going to just welcome Dave Rock. He is a freestyle spoken word artist, a teacher of flow speaking and conscious creativity, and also a pretty prolific Facebook writer and poster and instigator. So I've been following him since this whole time and through the embodiment folks. So he's had a life of an interesting life. And what I want to pinpoint from his bio is that he has, I'm going to just quote him. "I've grown up from a terrified, abused child to an angry, drug-addicted youth, to a lost young man, to a mostly happy, mostly loved up, reliably inspired guy, still far from perfect." This is the thing I wanted to say. Well, I realize I can show up anywhere, trusting myself to bring the best of myself. After a few years of freestyling on stage, I noticed a crazy contradiction. On stage, I felt pure flow and created reliable magic. Off stage, while trying to build my career, I felt stuck, drained, and depressed. He had a blinding, obvious epiphany. How I create is what I create. So this is flow writing, embodying inspiration on the page with Dave Rock. I hand it over to you.
Thanks, Laura. God, I'd completely forgotten that I wrote those words. I had like almost no idea that they were still on my website, actually. I really enjoyed hearing them. It's true, that did all happen, all that stuff, and it is all still true. I was just listening to, you know, in that promotional video, she had such a beautiful, clear, powerful way of saying, this is who I am and this is what I do. I loved it. And also she told me to enjoy my own session, which I really enjoyed hearing from her. But I was really reflecting as I listened. You know, God, yeah, sometimes I really feel that. Sometimes I really feel that sense of power, purpose, the clarity. It's just there. It's in my body. It's in my throat. It just comes through. And sometimes I have really no idea what I'm doing and who I am. And sometimes the last thing in the world I want to do is talk about myself or my work. And just I get this kind of bleh, you know, kind of a sensation that comes up in me. I would rather just, you know, roll around on the floor screaming for a few hours, or, you know, a few years or whatever. And I still both of those realities are still very strong for me. I have this absolute sense of trust. Right now in this moment, I have it. I have it whenever I am on stage. I have it whenever I make the time to sit down and to write. I have this trust in what wants to come through me. And at the same time, I still often have this sense of being very lost and scattered into pieces and having no idea where I'm going. And I want to share everything that we share today from that place. I'm right here in the middle of this journey with all of you, whether you're here now with us in this moment, whether you're watching this, you know, tomorrow or in 20 years time or whenever it might be. I'm still right here with you. I'm still trying to figure it all out. So how are you feeling in this moment? What are you bringing with you? What kind of stresses, pressures, what kind of desires, dreams? There are little bits of like silliness or weirdness that's wanting to come out, but you've got your I'm on a Zoom call face on. What's alive inside of you right now? Is it possible to just breathe into it all a little bit more? Just notice yourself a little bit more and let yourself out a little bit more. Is it possible to just take life in a tiny bit more on the inhale with no pressure, with no stress? It's not a how enlightened or how authentic or how inspired can you be competition. It's just like an invitation. How much more can you be with yourself in this moment? And is it possible to just let yourself go a little bit more in this moment? I'm going to close the window. Sirens going by. I want to see, I'm feeling better myself just after having said that. It's so good to see your faces. It really helps me. I want to explore this idea today that none of us are afraid of having nothing to say. None of us are afraid of what we have to say not being good enough, not being interesting or powerful or whatever it is enough. None of us actually have that fear. We may have that fear in our thoughts. We might talk about it. We might sometimes feel that sense of pressure, that nervousness, that resistance when we sit down to create. We might have some idea somewhere in our minds that we are not enough and what we do won't be enough. But I don't think that any of us actually believes that. And I don't think deep down that any of us is afraid of that. And my guess is that each one of you already knows this. What we're really afraid of, we're afraid of what we know wants to come through us. We're afraid of how much that we know we have to say. We're afraid of saying it because of how intense it might be, how vulnerable, how scary, how weird. The stories, the messages that are alive inside of us. You know, I met one of my 13 aunties. I have 13 aunts and uncles on my Irish side. And I met one of my like 8 or 9 aunties a couple of weeks ago. And I asked her how often she sees her 12 brothers and sisters. And she said, well, not so often. You know, there's nothing to say. And as soon as she said that, I just knew looking at her that the reality is my father's family have so much to say, and what they have to say is so big that they just choose to not talk at all. And I think that's what we do when we get creatively blocked. Writer's block, or speaker's block, or dancer's block, or fucker's block, or whatever it might be. It's a comfort zone. We choose to stay within this quite narrow bandwidth of being excited and inspired for a while, then being frustrated and guilty, ashamed for a while, then inspired, then frustrated. We would rather seesaw between those two things, sometimes for years, sometimes for our whole lives. We'd rather seesaw between those two things than really drop down into the level of love that we have for what wants to come through us and the amount of grief that we're holding for all of the days and the months and the years that we've shut ourselves down and not let life through because of a fear of how it might feel, a fear of how our lives might transform, a fear of how others will receive what we have to give. I'm not asking you to agree with me or to believe what I'm saying. I'm just telling you this is what I know to be true for myself. I have taught thousands of people, I've coached hundreds of people, and I've been writing since I was 7 years old, almost nonstop, with a lot of stopping and starting nonstop, stopping and starting, nonstop, stopping and starting. And I have never, in all the things I've done, I've never experienced that if I make enough time and space, and I am kind and generous and open enough to whatever comes through, I have never experienced that there is nothing there wanting to come through, wanting to be created. And I think that that's true for all of us. Every night when we dream, we have these brand new worlds. brand new people, monuments, artworks, bizarre realities, storylines. We don't have to sit down and plan our dreams. We don't worry about them. You know, we don't spend hours like agonizing over the plot twists and the character details of the people in our dreams. It all just comes instantly and effortlessly. And writing can feel like that too. Life can feel like that too. I know that you guys know all of this. I would love to hear just really I would love to hear really just condensed expressions of what's alive in you right now as I say all this. So if you want to raise your hand and get unmuted for a moment and just share a sentence or two.
I just want to say, panelists, you can unmute yourself and say something, but you then will be in the video.
I'm just grateful. I'm so grateful. That's all. I think this conference is on time, and your session I feel like is on time. And I'll just yeah. I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just so relieved, David, when you said you stop, start, because that's like my writing for the last 7 years. It's stop, start, stop, start. Thank God. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you, and I love what you said about that you sometimes don't know where you are, because I know that feeling so very well, and it was very relieving for me to. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the aim is always relief, even temporary relief from the insanity in our minds, right?
Dave, thank you for your very wise words. I'm just very aware from my Irish side as well, that sort of idea that there's so much to say, you get trapped or you get stuck because the amount of it is so kind of suffocating, then you get sort of saturated by it. So that was really helpful, because then it's like it's overwhelming and then you're stuck. So that stop start, I really sort of recognize that too.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to actually take from there. So for a couple of years on and off, I have practiced flow speaking, where I just set a timer for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes and I just try to speak everything that I can find inside of myself. And if I do that, when I show up to a stage or a date or a workshop or whatever it is, there's no sense of pressure or terror inside of myself anymore. And it's the same with writing. You know, the purpose of that flow speaking practice is that speaking purely for myself without trying to get a result, just to honor what's there and to let it come through, and it clears the channel. And when we write, most of our writing should also be just for ourselves or just for life, not trying to get some kind of a result out of ourselves, because what's actually missing for most of us, most of the time, it's not ability, it's not knowledge, it's definitely not that we have nothing to say. What's missing is we don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves. And we don't have a healthy relationship with our creativity. You know, you might think about it as that little kid that's inside, or that lightning bolt from God, or that jar of honey that you're opening up, you know, whatever it is. We've been in this like abusive, avoidant, and ambivalent relationship with our muses for such a long time, where we sit down and go, okay, now I have to do something amazing. Okay, I've done it. It's not actually good enough. So that was crap. Never do the crap again. Or it's like, give me more. I need more of it now. It has to be better. It's got to be so good that the whole world wants to give me their money and wants to fuck me. And it's, you know, it has to be so good that I save my parents and I save my family and I make everything okay for everyone. And it's like, can you imagine taking a 5-year-old boy or girl into a room and giving them a pen and paper and saying, you've got to write something so good that it validates your entire existence right now and makes everything okay for everybody else, but also doesn't upset anyone. And it's got to make you rich, and it's going to make you famous, and it's got to feel easy coming out. You've got to enjoy the whole thing. Enjoy it. Sit down now and enjoy it and do it and feel good and feel inspired. Can you imagine doing that to a little kid? We do it to ourselves. We do it to ourselves so much pressure, so much internalized pressure. Yeah. And that's why writing with no purpose whatsoever, with no agenda whatsoever, just to loosen the lid just to start to like get in place where you can tickle that lightning down again. You know, like 90% of my writing never sees the light of day. It gets burnt or thrown in a river or just put away. And it has to be like that, you know, and then the gems come, the things that do want to be shared with other people. So I want to start just kind of playfully scraping away some of the layers of stuff we've put on top of our gifts and looking at all of the things that our writing doesn't have to be and doesn't have to do. So if you have a pen and paper or a keyboard or whatever works in front of you, we're just going to start a couple of lists. And the first one is all of the people that you don't have to write for. They could be living people, they could be dead, they could be famous people you think you're supposed to impress or be like. It's a very, very big list, right? I just want you to get down the first 3, 4, 5 names and be willing to be surprised. I mean, there could be a lot, right? You could also write, I don't have to write this in order to save the entire human race. So that's all 7 billion. Don't have to please my mom and dad. I don't have to prove all my exes wrong, those fuckers. Just starting to get down a few names. Now you could work on this list over and over again. And sometimes, because we've made these unconscious agreements so many times, you might have to make the list over and over again in order to unbreak them too. Just get down a couple more. Now I want you to write at the head of another list all of the things that my writing does not have to do. Again, the list could end up being pretty much infinite, right? Just see what comes through. If you make this list day after day for a while, you might be really surprised by some of the unconscious bargains that are driving everything you're doing. And the thing is, because most of the things that we're trying to do are impossible, like save the world or validate our existence or beat everybody else, because they're impossible, it shuts our mind down completely. It's impossible to create when you're trying to create an impossible thing. So you end up either shutting down and not writing, or you write in a way that just burns you up and leaves you hollow inside. Doesn't have to be original or profound. Yeah, beautiful. Let's, you can unmute yourself and shout us some of these answers out. And if somebody's answer resonates with you, just throw up your hands and go, hallelujah.
Doesn't have to be social commentary that changes the world.
Hallelujah.
Doesn't have to be smart.
Hallelujah.
Doesn't have to be brilliant or prove I'm right.
Hallelujah.
It doesn't have to make sense.
Hallelujah.
It doesn't have to be clear. It doesn't have to be efficient.
Hallelujah. Let's take 1 or 2 more.
Doesn't have to be academic.
Hallelujah.
Doesn't have to be anything at all.
Hallelujah. That's beautiful. Okay. And let's dig a little deeper with this now. What are things that the writing does not have to do to you or for you? So this writing doesn't have to change my life or make me a better person or whatever. And let's skip the writing for now. Let's just shout them out.
Make me a lot of money.
Hallelujah.
Doesn't have to give me accolades or make me seen.
Hallelujah.
It doesn't have to make me be an authority figure.
Offer epiphanies. Repeat the question. Yeah. So, what are things that this writing does not have to achieve for you? What does it not have to do to you or for you personally? Let's take one or two more.
Doesn't have to make me sad.
Yeah. Yeah. My writing doesn't have to make everything that's happened in my life okay. And it doesn't have to make some kind of final shiny meaning or message out of my life for other people. And it doesn't always have to make sense. And it doesn't have to be complete. It doesn't have to lead me to God or make me a celebrity. Hallelujah. Yeah.
And it may not be able to say everything all at once. So it can be partial.
Absolutely. It's impossible, right? To say everything at once.
Yeah.
It takes a lifetime. And even then, all we're ever doing is really getting glimpses of something. Hallelujah. Doesn't have to put me in the pantheon. Doesn't have to resolve. Yeah. There can especially be a pressure in the kind of conscious community of which I guess most of us are a part, that your writing has to have some big message to it, and that it has to be shiny in the correct spiritual ways. Like if you're writing something vulnerable, it's got to be a sexy kind of vulnerability. If you're sharing your trauma, it's going to be one of the sexy kinds of trauma. You know, if it's raw, then it's the sexy kind of raw. It's really like, without even realizing it, just from reading so much bland and generic conscious writing that is out there, we fit this template into our heads of who we think we have to be in order for our writing to be valid. And most people leave most of themselves out when they come to the page. They do it to the stage too. I mean, we do it in all kinds of places, but without even realizing it, before the pen hits the paper or the finger hits the keys, we've already like automatically censored huge chunks of who we are because they don't fit our idea of what writing is. Somebody says that they don't have the unmute option. Oh yeah, only panelists, yeah, okay. So, okay, let's all just take a couple of breaths. Hold that list. If you can hold it physically, that's great. If you just hold it with your, whatever, your chakra hands or whatever, that's fine too. Just hold it up. Hold it up to heaven for a moment. Take a few big breaths. Make a bit of noise if you want to. But just shake it off. I expect to be at least a bit crazy for the rest of my life. So I expect to keep on having to do stuff like this over and over again. I mean, the moment we turn on the screens or walk out the door, society is brainwashing us with all the crazy anyway. So we might have to keep on unmaking these agreements over and over again. And now, just taking a moment and breathing into a sense of what are all the messages and the stories that want to come through you. Some of them you might be really clear about. Maybe some of them have already been in your head and your heart for years. Some maybe you've never imagined. So start another list. What wants to come through me? As much as you can, stay awake to your breathing, to your body, to the sensations happening inside you as you write. That's part of what wants to come through. As you're breathing, just checking if you're breathing into all of the different parts of yourself. What wants to come through me? I want to keep writing on this for a minute or two. So I'm going to go silent now. Give it another 30 seconds or so. How much are you letting yourself feel as you write? One or two more sentences if you got them. Okay, now, if you were writing on paper, you could see how it feels to just take that piece of paper and hold it against your chest and just breathe with it. If you're writing on a computer, you can do this with your imagination. It's the same. Soft, slow, deep breaths. You might not feel anything. That's totally okay. Just be curious. What happens when you breathe it in? If you're anything like me, then you will often fall into a kind of bullying yourself to try to make yourself write more. Judge, punish, bully, control, plan, whatever. And of course, that's really painful. So then you shut down and you rebel and you go, fuck you. You say fuck you to the inner bully or dictator or whatever it is. And then you don't write. So there's this beautiful seesaw. Control, rebel, control, rebel. You could do that your whole life. And underneath that, there's just love and grief in my experience. There is the depth of love, the hugeness of love that you have for wanting to express yourself, for wanting to express life, for the stories, for the messages, for the imagination that wants to come through you. And there's the sadness that we feel when we don't do that. It's a sadness that has no shame and no judgment in it. It's a sadness that can be profoundly healing because the sadness is also just the love. If we can find a way to keep dropping into how much love we're holding for what wants to come through us, if we can do that over and over again, we don't have to push or punish or plan ourselves into productivity anymore. When I go off track, when I end up stopping, this is all I have to do to come back. Really get into my body, really get into my heart, really feel how much love there is for what wants to come through. So taking a few more breaths with that. Again, it's totally fine if you're not feeling anything. It's not a test. It's not a competition. It's just like a reaching out of your hand to yourself. It's just a willingness. Sometimes we've got to reach out to ourselves over and over again before that part of ourselves where the gifts come from trusts us enough to really open up. We've got to show we're going to keep being kind, show that we're going to keep on being understanding, show that we're going to keep on being patient, that we're going to keep reaching out. We've got to show ourselves that we're going to keep on welcoming whatever comes through us, even when it's crap. I know you guys know all these things. It's really coming home to knowing it in the body and feeling it in the body that makes the difference. So if you want to, you could hold up that piece of paper or hold up that screen in your imagination again and just go, hallelujah. Do it again. Do it a couple of times. See how much juice you can give it. It's beautiful. You can have a willingness to celebrate the fact that you even want to express something. Fuck, like what a gift to have something to want to say. What a gift. And now I want to start another list. A list of all of the parts of yourself that want to come through in your writing. What parts of me want to come through when I write? What parts of myself am I not letting through in my writing? Just keep going for another minute. You can write the same thing over and over again. You can write things that make no sense. You can write that you don't know. There's no way to get this wrong. Take a moment and think about it like this. When you're with your close friends and you're really relaxed and you're having a really good time, what are the kinds of things that you say? What kind of jokes do you make? What kind of topics do you bring up? What parts of yourself do you show then? And are you allowing those things through in your writing? Your weird humor, your sex drive, your terrible failings, your lunacy. Who are you when you're alone on a mountaintop or by the ocean or alone in the dark? Do you let those parts of yourself come through? Just take a couple more moments. I'm going to ask the question one more way. What parts of yourself, if you let them come through in the writing, would give you this feeling of fuck yeah? And would give that to your readers too. Like finally somebody has said this. Finally somebody is showing this. Finally somebody is being this. Few more moments. It doesn't matter if nothing comes. It doesn't matter what comes. It's the question itself is what matters. I ask myself this question every day, day after day. Different things come each time. Okay, final words. Wherever you're at, finishing up for now. Grab that piece of paper again if you want to, completely non-mandatory, and hold it up. Shake it at the sky. Yell out, hallelujah! Actually, I'd love all of you panelists to unmute yourself and all give a few hallelujahs together. I want to hear you.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah!
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 Yay! You want to get
Hallelujah!
1, 2, 3.
Hallelujah!
Beautiful.
Mm.
God, what would it be like to extend this sense of welcoming towards ourselves every time? Every time, this curiosity, this fascination. What else wants to come through? I would love to just hear from a couple of people. What's coming up for you now? What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
I have one phrase that I'm invested in, and it's the strength of my weakness. And I'm gonna sit with that a while and dive into it.
There's much more freedom and play, and the hallelujahs with everybody, like just the feeling of all of our stuff, and you naming so many expressions of what we're feeling or what we has just created a sense of play and joyousness around the experience that doesn't feel, it feels like, oh, I could just go over here or there. I don't need to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
I feel, sorry, can I go?
Yeah.
I feel like really very changing moods within the last half an hour. Like all of a sudden I'm feeling such sadness, and my hallelujah was just like a hallelujah, you know, that's the best I could master right now. I mean, I could either go there or I could go into like a full-on raging scream, but it was like not joyous. It was so, and like 5 minutes ago, the hallelujah was just so much fun. So it's I'm just really shifting. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And this is the main reason we stay creatively blocked, is because we know if I go into some of this joy and excitement for a while, then there's going to be this sadness. Then there's going to be this anger. Then there's going to be this other thing. Then there's going to be joy again. Then the anger again. Then the joy again. Then the sadness. We know if we keep on expressing ourselves authentically, really dropping in deep and really allowing through everything that wants to come through, we're going to feel more of everything all of the time. And like, you know, the cars that do the beeping thing, I think I mentioned this in one of my posts. You know, when a car tells you like you're about to bang into another and it goes beep, 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 our unconscious goes, whoa, you're about to touch into that, you know, that heartbreak that's still there from your ex, or that thing that happened when you were 7 and the monkey took your ice cream. And it's just like, oh, I don't want to go there. I'd rather just shut down again. And of course, the magic is when we can be with the grief and the rage, and I know you guys know this, then there's more joy and there's more love and there's more peace too. I mean, even just looking at you now, Adi, like you're smiling again, having named that sadness. Yeah, and it can all be there too. And God, it wants to be shared. Like the sadness wants to be shared. Beautiful. Anyone else? One or two more?
I'm just sort of seeing how much of me isn't allowed in my writing. And it's quite striking.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm feeling more freedom from what we have talked about, like free to express both sadness and joy.
Yeah. Just noticing the fact that we're holding all of this back is enough most of the time. And when you start to really look at all the parts of yourself you're leaving out, you'll be amazed when you go around and you read other writing. Like, you'll be amazed at just how generic most of it is. It's almost like most of it could be written by the same person. And that's not because they're not a unique human being. It's because they're not allowing all of themselves to come through. They're unconsciously filtering. Like, I want that, you know? Where's that voice that's your voice?
I mean, so the sense of connection that's happening through, because I hear a lot of people say they're zoomed out and they've had too much of Zoom, but I think the way you've done this session and the way a lot of the conference has interacted with the audience has been really, really refreshing and really amazing to see. So that there is a kind of a very kind of, well, embodied, if I'm allowed to say that, embodied and renewed and refreshing kind of feel to how we can connect with each other in these formats. I really love that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I had no idea what to say there. That's why I was being silent. Want to talk through a kind of a nutshell of what might happen day by day when we show up to the page. So, you know, maybe you finally wrestled your schedule or your resistance or whatever it is, you've beaten it to the ground or whatever it is, you've got a day off work or whatever it is, and you finally sit down, you got the pen, you got the paper, you got the keyboard, you got the screen, and you sit down. And maybe it's exciting to start with and it feels really good. It's like, oh, it's been so long. Maybe it feels crap to start with. Maybe you just have no idea what to say. Maybe it feels like there's nothing there to come through. If it feels like there's nothing there to come through, it's for all of the reasons we've already explored. And if the stuff that's coming through is not very good, it's probably just because you've been bottling yourself up and you've got a backlog of noise that needs to be expressed. The noise needs to be expressed in order for the gems to arrive too. But if you're like most human beings I've ever taught, including myself some of the time, the moment that you start to feel uncomfortable, the moment that you start to feel like something is wrong, it's not really going right, I don't like what's happening, I don't like the way I feel, you're probably going to distract yourself or quit. And the secret is that all of the breakthroughs happen on the other side of the resistance. And I also know that you know this, but we really need reminding. There's actually a pattern of brain waves that needs to take place in order for full flow to kick in. And struggling is part of that cycle. Just like we have a 90-minute cycle when we're sleeping, you know, alpha, beta, theta, delta. It's exactly the same with flow. And there's a point where when you're sitting down to write and you don't know what to say and you can't make sense of the message or it's overwhelming or it's coming out crap, what's happening is your brain is trying to wire up new connections between things. And that inevitably feels uncomfortable. It's a feeling of uncertainty and a feeling of being incapable of doing what you're trying to do. That's something that we actually have to feel over and over again, day after day. And it's when you sit and you stay through that and you keep going, your brain has a chance to find full flow by all of those connections getting wired up. And that's when magic happens. So most people walk away just before the breakthrough over and over again. And if you do that enough times, that's like a really great way to create depression and hopelessness and a sense of being doomed, right? As a human being, as well as a creator. And it's the capacity to sit through the resistance and the uncertainty. That's all it takes for magic to happen reliably. Not every single time. It's not something that we can just turn on or off. But if you keep going, it will happen more and more often, more and more easily, deeper and deeper, lasting longer and longer, and you'll trust it more and more. And if you really let the effect of all of that keep on washing through your body, pretty soon you'll come to a place where you will just know that there is always this magic in there wanting to come through, and all you've got to do is sit still long enough for that to happen. And be willing to tell all the truths. Be willing to let all the parts through. That really is, it really is that simple. I'm getting a bit distracted by all the chats. It's tricky, isn't it? There's all this like constant, it's a bit like being a human being, I guess. There's all this noise and text constantly in the back of the mind, you know, and it's all really beautiful, meaningful things. Actually, I would love to read them all. But it's like my brain is being pulled in two different directions at once. So what did I want to say about that? If you do that enough times, you will actually learn, not at an intellectual level, but at the level of the neurochemistry and at the level of your body, you'll learn that there's nothing to be afraid of. And a kind of certainty will start to really sink in deep into your tissues. Because in order to write something valuable for us, valuable for the world, we have to go beyond what we know how to do. We've got to go beyond what we know how to say. We've got to be willing to actually grow as a human being, because when we're writing something that really means something to us, we're actually receiving a gift from it ourselves. It's pushing us, it's forcing us to stretch as a human being. And that's always going to be uncomfortable. But if you keep on going through that enough times, pretty soon you'll realize that there's just like this tap. There's this lightning tap in your mind where even if you sat for the rest of your life and wrote non-stop, you wouldn't even be scratching the surface of what wants to come through you, of what can come through you. Does that make sense? Yeah. How am I doing for time? Do I have 4 minutes? 4 minutes, okay. Take a few breaths and just imagine that everything that you want to write is already alive inside of you. You might see it as colors. You might see it as images. It might be physical sensations. It might be sounds. It might be words. It's all there. It's a landscape you get to visit for the rest of your life and bring back gifts from. And it's like, you know, every time we go there to that place, it feels so beautiful. You might say to yourself, fuck, why did I wait so long to go back to Narnia or, you know, wherever it is? We can't really remember what it's like to be in Narnia when we're in the ordinary world. We can't remember what full flow or full connection to grace or inspiration feels like when we're in ordinary brain states. You might say, fuck, why did I wait so long? Why did I distract myself and numb myself and do so many stupid things in order to avoid feeling this wholeness of who I am? And of course, it's because of trauma and grief and all this other stuff. And we need, hello, there's my mum. She just popped up here in the last 3 minutes. We need a lot of safety and support externally in our lives and internally within ourselves in order to have the strength to keep on going through that resistance expressing all of those parts of ourselves and going through that uncertainty and that inability, that like walking on thin air that it takes to get to that magical place again and again. So there is never any room whatsoever for judgment or shame. We can go off track a million times in our lives. That's perfect. Just have to notice and get back on. What am I not saying? What parts of myself want to come through in my writing? What stories, what messages, what parts of the world want to come through me? What am I not allowing myself to write? What am I not allowing myself to feel? What would feel fucking great to write right now? It's about being in a relationship with the place inside of ourselves where all of this magic comes from. If you commit to that relationship, you get the gifts. Thanks so much, guys. It's been really beautiful hanging out with you all. Oh, if you head over to my website, flowspeaking.com, I guess it'll be popped in there or whatever. I'm going to be teaching some day-long Zoom writing workshops soon, and also flow speaking workshops. Just sign up. I will send you a load of free PDF guides and videos and all kinds of things, and I'll let you know when the workshops are happening. They're going to be happening soon. Thanks so much. It's been so beautiful hanging out with you all.